I believe we have a great audience today, and we have an equally great panel. And I believe you're going to enjoy it and have fun. I'll let the panel introduce themselves for 10 seconds each. And I'll just tell you 2 words about me, so you know who I am, and then the rest also will introduce themselves. My name is Athanasios Ladopoulos. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of LAPO blockchain based in Switzerland. We're a company which is building the next generation true currency, digital currency, not a speculative trading asset. You wouldn't expect it to go to the moon, but you would expect it to be a currency that you will be able to pay your coffee and do the normal things a currency does. My exposure is also in ed tech, education technology, and I'm thrilled to be here and chair this panel. So if I start from my left-hand side to introduce yourselves.
Hello, thanks for the invitation. I'm Nikos Moraitakis.
Microphone.
Oh, yes, sure. Forgot. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm usually a loud person, so it usually works the other way. Anyway, so I'm Nikos Moraitakis. Thank you for the invitation. I'm the CEO of Workable. Workable is a product that helps thousands of companies all over the world run their entire hiring process. Still a startup, but growing. That's it, basically. Let me move on to the questions later.
Hello everyone, I am Astyanax. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Norbloc. We actually employ blockchain technology to help on regulation. So essentially we help banks with corporate identity and KYC. And the company is based in Sweden with offices in Athens and Dubai. And I'm actually based on a plane, given the job that I do.
Hi everyone, my name is Alexis. I'm the co-founder of Direct. Direct is a next generation insurance company operating in Greece and Cyprus as we speak, looking to expand into other blind spot markets around here in the next couple of years. View is that you're taking a very, very legacy business like insurance and you try to disrupt it. So looking at blockchain, AI and all that, looking forward to the conversation.
Hello, my name is Kostis. I'm the lead engineer in Plum Fintech, a company that tries to help everyday people manage their finances better and invest their money so they are in a better financial situation. And I will talk today about AI and blockchain.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sotiris Bantas. I'm the founder and CEO of Centaur Analytics. It's a technology startup company which started in Greece. We now have our headquarters in the US. We help customers in agriculture and the food industry preserve the quality of harvested products from the farm all the way to the supermarket shelves. And we do this with Internet of Things technology, with sensors, AI, and data analytics methods.
Excellent. A lot of people talk about AI and blockchain. Those who understand AI, they can see the benefit that it can have in the society, the benefit it can have at the personal level, going after illnesses, the benefit it can have into business, employment. Those people who understand less of AI, they see it as kind of a threat, kind of, have I been left behind? Would I be surrounding some of my freedoms? Equally, people who understand blockchain, they can see the liberalization, the decentralization, the ability to be inclusive for people who lack proximity to the traditional banking system. On the other hand, people see it exactly the opposite. Is this going to end up in the hands of one centralized government? Am I surrounding my liberty? Would it be the case that the system will decide to turn off the tap and I have no money because there's no cash left? So there is a lot of plus and minus and a great misunderstanding in between. But before we start with the panel and the questions, I would like to give a layman's definition of the 2 terms. And apologies for those who are experts. This is going to be a layman's definition, okay? AI is the bringing together of those technologies that would help a machine, being a computer, being a robot, being a humanoid, android, to perform the tasks that a human being does equally or better than the human being. And when it comes to the blockchain, we see it as a mean of peer-to-peer interaction, which uses a community to confirm the validity of that interaction and a distributed database system to store those interactions in a way that cannot be altered. If we can make it so simple, then we go through to the questions and hit the nail on the head. Is AI an agent and a driver to prosperity for the Greek economy?
Could be. Could be. I mean, a lot of things could do that. There's two ways to answer this question, I think. One way is that any big technological change that is going to upset the existing order of products and technologies that lead to prosperity allows countries who are a little bit behind from the rest an opportunity to leapfrog. It has happened with mobile, with the internet, with a lot of other technologies. Greece is in a situation where it has the capability to adopt new technology, and in any such step without a lot of incumbents, without a lot of existing systems, allows people to leapfrog and potentially can be an engine for growth. The other thing that, the other way to answer this question, and I'm not going to be pleasant about this, is that the machine learning changing the nature of some professions and work is going to disturb the national social security systems that all the countries have built. Because essentially, if you think about it, the post-war order is that we are valuing people according to their labor, and this is how we provide healthcare and pensions for them. Maybe the value of labor is going to be reindexed or changed, and that is going to completely wreck the whole financial system around pension. But we have a wrecked one anyway, so we welcome that opportunity to wipe the slate clean.
Actually, I very much agree with you, and I very much agree with both points around the positive and the potentially challenging aspects. And I think that also applies to blockchain technology. If you look at blockchain technology, essentially, as actually the very title of the conference is, it's a decentralized approach to matters. So essentially, all the organizations right now that play the central counterparty to any transaction, to any information exchange, these are going to be the ones that are going to be disintermediated. The way that corporations, banks, the government works will have to change, and will have to change dramatically. So, to your point, it was actually Sakis about artificial intelligence and blockchain. I think they come very well together because artificial intelligence is, according to me, how you make optimal use of data to make informed decisions and take actions. Blockchain is how you share that data in the most optimal manner. So the two together can be very disruptive in the economy, in the government, in a state.
I mean, just echoing the comments of both Nikos and Astyanax, I think there's kind of two ways of looking at it. One of them is how we're going to use new technologies, including blockchain and AI, in rewiring or rebuilding the Greek economy, which is more internally looking. And the other one is there a competitive edge of Greece as Greece to take advantage of a global opportunity that right now we're not tapping into using new technologies? And when you look around the panel, most companies are outward looking, with the exception of, I would say, Ladopoulos. We're trying to fix Greece rather than go and conquer the world. And on the second, I think it becomes a much more competitive landscape. So it becomes much more of an even competitive field. If you're a good engineer, if you're a good data scientist, you can be sitting in Athens and competing at a global level, but you're competing with the best minds in the world. So you're not in a protected environment. Now, looking in the inward-looking side of things, which is what we're trying to do, when you look at the way the banks are structured, insurance companies are structured, social security structure is all bankrupt, to be very honest. And these technologies will just highlight, the minute that they're enforced by regulation, they will highlight the weakness of the incumbents in the traditional system. Is it an opportunity to leapfrog? As Nikos said, I totally believe so, but you need a lot more Elas Direct in many different sectors to be able to do that. And that's not currently, it's not a fertile enough ground for inward-looking companies to fix Greece.
I very much agree with what the other guys have said. I think I want to, not to say the same things, I want to highlight some challenges that we're going to face in Greece. I think AI I think our government has not used AI as much as it should in theory, and let's say we all know that a lot of people that have gone abroad, one of their major pains of people was also always like, how does the government work here and all the processes that you have to go through manually. And I think there is a big opportunity of, if things change dramatically, that the institutions in Greece actually use AI to help make a lot of processes much more easy for people. I can give some examples. For example, you know, you have to do all these things manually to identify yourself. Using AI for KYC purposes, all the stuff, not having to be present at every place and using papers. I think a lot of this stuff is going to change, it's going to improve everyday life and actually make more people think of Greece as a more modern country. And also, I think a big challenge is how do you actually progress in AI in Greece if you don't have the mind to do that. There is a problem that a lot of people don't think Greece as a country of innovation. We're trying to change that. Now opportunities and investments come to Greece, which actually give you the opportunity to work on such sectors, but most people do not stay in Greece to work on this kind of innovation. And this is a big challenge that we need to solve. We need to bring people back to work on these things here in Greece, be it at helping companies or government, I don't know, but we need to give incentives for people to come back and share their knowledge with us.
So speaking last in this round, I'm going to take a contrarian approach, and for transparency, my company uses a lot of the technologies that this panel is elaborating on, AI, blockchain, the works. However, in terms of creating a sustainable competitive advantage for Greece, which is the essence of your question, Sakis, it will not be much of a competitive advantage because all these technologies are on a rapid path for commoditization and dematerialization. They're already immaterial, and demonetization, which means that they will be accessible by any startup anywhere on the planet. So how do we have to use those ingredients. I'm just arguing that there will not be much of a competitive advantage if everybody else on the planet can use them. So what is a sustainable competitive advantage for somebody which decides, like we did, to start a technology enterprise out of Greece? It has to do with ownership of data, for sure, which is very important in my industry, in agriculture and food. It also has to do with leveraging other, like deep tech and deep knowledge and skill sets that are abundant in your area. So I'm kind of biased because I'm a product of the Greek Polytechnion, I'm an electrical engineer. And we should not forget that we have a very strong foundation in mathematics, in engineering, in biology. And our universities are producing those skill sets currently and in a much higher volume than what used to be the case before. So in terms of using AI, yes, you have to use it. My layman's definition of AI is where engineers resort to when they're too lazy to create a physical model for the system they want to analyze. So they let machines process that. So before you venture towards AI and before you venture towards machine learning, have you done the necessary engineering and mathematical heavy lifting to model your system and create code that your technology, that your product can use and leverage in order to train a machine learning system that can do this repetitively and cost efficiently on the cloud later. So don't resort to sort of, hey, I'm going to have an algorithm that will sort of machine learn the hell out of this situation, be it a classification problem, be it a regression problem, whatever. Do the necessary heavy lifting, do the necessary architecture, leverage all the engineering and mathematics skill sets you have at your disposal, hire those skill sets, and then hire the data scientists that can work alongside traditional engineering disciplines to create a really competitive product that will have a huge barrier to entry for third parties. And by the way, it's not very easy to obtain a patent for a machine learning algorithm anymore. And that covers anything under the sun with respect to software. But it is highly possible, and you'll stand very good chances, as my company has done, to obtain a patent, which is a barrier to entry, for something that runs, that's actually a construct, and a physical construct in a machine that processes data.
I like contrarian thinking, and it's incremental contrarian thinking. It's not exactly purely contrarian thinking. It builds on top of it, and that's great. I will put the ball on the other side, and I would call a consultant, a firm famous in Greece, a Centaur, that states out 190 billion the potential benefit for Greece to 2035, if I'm not mistaken. That's a lot of potential benefit, if that's okay. But I'll throw a spin on the, I'll throw a teaser actually and say, are we prepared to accept administration in this country, which is AI power driven?
Generally, in this country, we're not prepared for a lot of things, but and I don't think we know really what the second order implications of all the things we're building are going to be.
Very good.
Okay, so we understand a little bit of the technology. We can imagine like the immediate things you can build with it, but you don't really know, what this leads to. Look at what's going on now with Facebook and privacy and the election. I mean, who would think that this is what this would lead? So I don't think it's a matter of preparedness. I think it is a matter of, creating a society, an administration, policy, whatever, that is willing to have a conversation about the future. And I think the biggest mistake we've been doing, and we have, we can somehow be excused here in Greece because we've been through a lot. For the past 10 years, we've been having a conversation which was going along the lines of what is the pension reduction going to be next month, and whether this thing is going to be reinstated, and basically a conversation about how can we hold on to shit that happened 20 years ago. And nobody's having a conversation about what happens to cities when transportation changes. What happens to politics when people can target fake news to, gerrymandered targeting. And then what happens when AI replaces some jobs? And trust me, it's going to be your jobs. If you're sitting on a computer and processing information, you have high status because of that, that's the easy one for us to do. Plumber, screw this, we're not going to do this anytime soon. It's not going to happen. Okay.
Plumbers is a good job. Safe job.
Yeah. So are we prepared? Are we having any conversation about what's going on? It's not a matter of preparation. Nobody's prepared, but can we have the conversation when it happens, or are we still going to be talking about the next installment of the memorandum or some interest rate or something?
I don't think actually any country is ready to accept any artificial intelligence-based administration. But if we look, for example, now the US presidential elections, there is a candidate, Andrew Yang, who is very open about the fact that artificial intelligence will take over the vast majority of jobs that Americans currently enjoy. And he's actually opening the discussion. And he's opening the discussion in a way that, okay, what can we do about these people? Can we retrain them? Retraining typically does not work well. Do we have a universal salary for the state? So these discussions take time. And as Nikos said, we have not even started to consider these discussions in Greece. And unfortunately, it's actually the mentality that we need to change to start having these discussions to finally come close to accepting any form of technology in administration that's more advanced than a PC that was invented in early 80s.
This has always been a dilemma in every single country through every wave of technological innovation through the years. Is the printed press going to affect the way people think? Is the Bibles that are printed instead of being talked about by a bishop or by a priest or whatever? This has always been a dilemma, and this has always been a matter of debate. And one thing is always for sure, that change happens, and you never prepare for it, and you always have to live through it. I think when you look at Greece, back to your point about 2035, we're talking about one of the countries that has one of the oldest populations around. By definition, we need to change, mostly because a lot of us will die by then, and the people that will live will have to figure out something else to do with their lives. And to the point that Nikos made before, all the jobs will be one way or another be affected. Greece will always be a nice place to visit for tourism, and there's certain sectors that you can predict that will always be here. But how that gets converted to GDP growth, and how does that get converted to a broader sense of, are we doing well as a society? I think that's going to change dramatically. And to your point, are we ready for it? Definitely not. And I think one of the bad things about Greece, and the crisis is helping in that, we have been traditionally very backward looking as a people. And there's a certain element of self-entitlement that, thankfully, because of the crisis, is being eroded away. So looking forward to whether it's AI, blockchain, or any other new technology that comes in and disrupts, we do need this mindset change that Astyanax talked about, because we're not as open as a society to accept change. But things will happen, especially in the horizon of 20 years that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think there is no question of being prepared or not. This has been like that for the past, 100 years. The technology has been progressing like that. Technology didn't ask people solving coal in a train if it's okay to build electrical trains. So I guess it's a matter of technology is just, the fact. It just happens, and people have to adopt to it. Adoption, on the other hand, and the speed of adoption is something that might differ from country to country. And I think, as people said here in this panel, you can't expect adoption to be very fast when you have population here in Greece, for example, that old people, you can see right now people refuse to go to an ATM to withdraw cash. They go to inside the bank and they wait in queues. That's not some population that you think could be familiar with AI disruption in due time. So yeah, for sure, I don't think we are prepared for that, and we will never be. And it's a matter of it's just what's going to happen. So I think naturally, as this generation, as we become the elderly people, and the young people come at our place, people will be more familiar with all these things. So it will come naturally with time. So this is not something I personally worry about, let's say. I think it's natural process.
So the quick answer is no, we're not prepared for any of this. The reason we're not prepared is, first of all, speaking of Greece, an AI-driven reformation of our economy is nice and pretty much wanted, but we have another very significant reform to do at the same time, which is shifting from creating products for internal consumption to creating products and services for trading them internationally. So that's a huge formative or reformative change that needs to happen. Now, can this happen through AI and blockchain? That's pretty likely, but we have to sort of shift that mindset first before we address other aspects of, hey, we need to infuse innovation in our product and value creating process. Now, the reason we're not prepared for it is not just in Greece, but anywhere on the planet, is because the frame of reference of this discussion is totally wrong. We're framing it on the here and now, whereas we should be framing it on the future, because the future is coming faster than the future, the rate of change in the past. So forget about those jobs. Those jobs are pretty much gone. They're gone, baby. They're not coming back. ML, AI will replace those jobs. We're going to have self-driving cars. We're going to have self-driving trucks. It will start from places like Latin America. So those jobs will be gone. So the discussion that I personally find sort of future-proof and fertile in terms of preparing ourselves as a planet, as an ecosystem, as any individual market and economy for the future is how will you support this shift in the labor force, and what will you do with the redundant people that will not have a day job anymore? They will not have those 8 hours or 7.5 hours or 7 hours of work per day. So that rapidly shifts from being a technological discussion to being, unfortunately, a political discussion, which is outside the frame of this panel. But we need to have that discussion, so we need to start thinking about things like guaranteed minimum income. We need to start thinking about things, how do you exploit somebody who's in their 60s and 70s, and they're still pretty much active and in good health, and they want to offer, but there's no job for them. So how do you make use out of this redundant or superfluous labor force, like use them in community work, use them to support even more elderly people that need to have some company, and an AI will not keep them as good company as a human being, a warm body next to them. So we need to start off like community and humanitarian dimensions to this change that technology is bringing in terms of, hey, you know, how many jobs are we going to lose? We're going to lose a lot because they will not be needed. And by the way, that's not a bad thing for us, because that's going to earn us higher productivity. It's going to help us, like in my domain, produce more out of farming, out of land, be better fed, you know, have better clothes to wear, have better entertainment to consume. So it's not a bad thing, and it will create wealth. So the point for me is, how do you channel this wealth to cover the part of the population that will not need to work anymore?
Evidently, there is no way you can have economic evolution if you don't have political evolution. So these elements are interwoven, but evidently also this panel doesn't take prisoners. It's straight to the point and directly, so there's no forgiveness. I would like us to move to the examples, real-life examples that take place right now in Greece or beyond Greece, to the sectors that each of the panelists is exposed to. And I will start by asking, what is the impact of AI in the job-seeking environment, and what are the skills that the Greek employees should be looking forward to for future employment?
Okay. First of all, you know, AI is sometimes a little bit of a misleading term. It's, or at least in our industry, you know, in anything that has to do with the employment industry. Right now, at best, what you can say, you have data collection at scale and good statistical modeling that actually surfaces interesting information. There's two aspects, you know, there's two ways you can approach this. One is technology about employment, which I'm involved in it, obviously. There, what's interesting is that we can actually go and help people find jobs, or help companies find people in ways that were previously unimaginable. Okay. Because we can process the data in ways that previously were unimaginable, and incorporate models where we see how actual humans do the job. Most of what is called AI in these days, in these industries, is basically statistical models mimicking human behavior. There's a lot of people that are worried about this. Machines are going to be racist, like racist human hiring managers, etc. I think that's a bullshit conversation. In reality, it's the opposite. Machines are going to help you identify and find and match people in ways that were previously untenable. On your question about, you know, how people should plan their careers around this, I think what this is going to do, it's going to reduce the importance of signaling items on people's CVs. University education is outdated. Sorry, it is. And right now it's just a credential system. I went to Harvard, and that's how my CV gets noticed. That is very useful when, you know, people don't know anything about CVs and they're just looking at them for 6 seconds for a couple of keywords that they identify. There are shoppers like branding. They go out and buy the detergent that they heard on TV. This is when computers do a more thorough job of that. The impact of that is going to be reduced massively. And the other thing is what I said earlier. If your jobs involves sitting in front of a computer, reading information, understanding it, and doing something as a response to that, find another job.
Well, I hope people not sitting in front of the computer and putting data inside, a lot of them, because they will be feeling a bit insecure right now, but we have to face reality. Now, let's go to the insurance industry, and let's find out how AI is penetrating this industry. Is it changing this industry, and what the vision will be for this industry from one of the participants of the panel?
I guess that's me. Insurance, to start with, is a very big sector, and it's a sector that people typically ignore. The main reason is because you don't like the product. You're taking a bet that you're going to crash, you're taking a bet that you're going to die, you're taking a bet that whatever it is you're trying to insure. As a result, insurance companies traditionally, for the last 500 years, have always relied on, can I make an assumption about what is the risk that the person sitting across the table from me, what is the likelihood that this person is going to die, crash, whatever it may be. And it's not a nice product. It's not something you like talking about. It's not a sexy iPhone that you have to talk about. Now, when you look at the kind of data you collect, it's all proxies. So historically, I will ask you 15 questions to figure out if you're a good driver. Are you young? What kind of car do you drive? Where do you live? Have you been to Harvard or any university education? So when you start thinking about what a typical underwriter does in the insurance industry, is more or less that. And the benefit that an insurance company has, very basic kind of one-on-one insurance, is you have a pooling of the population. So if I select enough people that are diverse enough, then I'm spreading my risk. I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. So back to the question about AI and blockchain. I think insurance is one of the sectors that, similar to the rest of the financial services, will have tremendous potential and tremendous threats from AI. It's one of those things that, people will be replaced, the traditional underwriting will change. The minute you have decentralized data sitting somewhere where you can access it, you can do a lot smarter underwriting. Right now in a home insurance product, we don't ask a single question. We just tell you, just put your house on the map, and we hit a bunch of databases in the back end, all the way from earthquake modeling that Swiss Re has in Switzerland, all the way down to NASA to see live fires. So you're using a lot of this data and you're doing a lot of automated underwriting. Is it advanced enough to be called AI? Not really. And I think the sector has a lot of potential in that direction. What is currently happening, and unfortunately Greece is a bit of a blind spot market in that regard, is that a lot of the innovation that is happening in insurance of the big companies, the AXAs, the Allianzes, the Generalis of the world, is happening in core markets, in their core home turf typically, or the markets where they believe that there's huge potential, China, Brazil, India, places like that. So when you look at Greece, are we going to see AXA or Allianz coming up with an AI-driven, even a bot to underwrite you or to settle claims and whatever? The answer is definitely not. And if they have this expectation, go into plumbing again. So again, looking at the insurance industry, huge potential. A lot of it will come at the regional or local level from companies like ourselves that are going to focus on specific niches and try to crack that. But the global domination of the whole insurance industry will become fully automated and fully decentralized and all that. We're many, many, many years away from that.
Very good. And what about agri-tech? What would be the impact of AI, possibly blockchain as well?
Yeah, so it's already happening. There's a flurry of activity from agriculture technology, we call them agtech companies that are out to automate and digitize the way that products are farmed, harvested, and in the case of my company, preserve, transported safely, and so on and so forth. There are significant challenges to be overcome. There will be roughly 10 billion people on the planet by 2050, and the rate of evolution in the way in our farming systems is not catching up with the foreseen demand. So what do? You need disruptive change. You need things like fully mechanized agriculture. Some of it is already happening. You see combines tractors that are driven from GPS and from machine learning algorithms. Eventually, you will not need to have a farmer in the cab while this is ongoing. So there is a lot of sort of intelligence on how to navigate a tractor on the field to do planting, to do harvesting, spraying, and so on and so forth. The additional problems that need to be surmounted, and this is where my company is active, is reducing the losses and the waste that we incur when we attempt to bring products from the farm, harvest them, and transport them to food processing, and from food processing to retail. There's still a lot of waste there. Roughly, it's in the hundreds of billions anyway. So we need to recoup some of that waste. And by the way, we need to also reduce the amount of carbon dioxide, and methane that we're emitting to the environment while we farm. And that's only possible by optimization methods, which will be largely driven by machine learning, by artificial intelligence. And there is also the issue of the declining consumer trust in products. You see in the news, even a couple of months ago, there was a significant case of people selling organic product for selling conventional products and labeling them organic. There's still a lot of like food safety incidents and product recalls, especially in the fresh fruit and vegetables section. And there we need traceability systems. These are starting to be powered by blockchain, because you need that distributed, immutable record that blockchain can enable to ensure that when somebody buys a product off the shelf, that the provenance of that product and the stages it went through are well recorded, and even the consumer with a smartphone can unravel that data story behind the product that they're about to consume and bring to their family table.
Evidently, a lot has to be done with trust and transparency in your sector, and I'm sure in many other sectors, and blockchain could provide the footprint to trace backwards and verify the validity of a claim, which is absolutely necessary in a society in order to maintain its own coherence and structure. But let's see how AI affects fintech and blockchain.
Yeah. Fintech, you can't talk about fintech without talking about traditional banks and what they do right now. And let's say we built Plum in order, I guess we saw a problem in the UK because we're based there, and here we have like our engineering department. In the UK, more than 7% of people had less than 3 salaries in their bank accounts. People were obviously having trouble managing their money, and there's a scary amount of people who are actually, in their overdraft, and they're being charged for actually borrowing money from the banks. And the banks, let's just say that they do not try to prevent this. So the traditional banks do that, that's how they operate. And we have the tech to stop this from happening. And so neobanks like Monzo, Revolut, or all these known names and players, and us as a fintech application, what we're trying to do is essentially we're trying to we can model financial behavior of people and help them make good decisions, help predict their financial situation in the coming months, and actually prevent things like that from happening. Actually, as it has been said in this panel, AI is kind of a misleading term sometimes. It's being used more as a buzzword. Sometimes machine learning is not the issue, but it's knowing your domain well and modeling the solutions. So basically, sometimes it's just knowing your domain, having a good decision tree underneath. And a lot of the companies, that's what they're trying to do. And machine learning is like the last resort. You might use it for understanding some very complex correlations in transactional data. But we are very much behind in actually understanding simple behavioral insights from our users and guiding them with simple decision trees. So we have to focus on that, and we have to help people actually achieve financial goals, because that's essentially what they want to do, without having to borrow money. AI can help you identify if you're overpaying on stuff. If you could, it's easy to understand with AI if you're going to be bankrupt in 3 months. And Fintech is going to try to solve this thing, and I think it will have a huge impact. So basically, I hope a challenge here is that AI will be used for the good of the people and not for actually, not providing loans to people because of some AI that decides that you're not trustful enough. So I hope us and other companies, we try to actually use AI in a manner that will actually help people be in a better financial condition in their lives.
Evidently, AI affects the banking system in many, many different layers, from the decision-making towards the retail, but also from the retail into making the right decisions. I mean, if you remember Star Wars, there was a small creature called Yoda. So AI might become your personal Yoda when it comes to your financial decisions, making sure that you don't overstep towards the direction that would lead to bad financial management, which will affect your life. But let's go and speak for something which is very specific into the finance industry that affects a lot also the adoption of blockchain itself as a technology, but also of digital currencies. And this is KYC, AML, and the rest.
So actually I should start with a note, because I think we're a bit too much gloom and doom. And it's Friday, so people here are going to go home. They have a weekend to think about their jobs. Are they safe? Are they not? Being entrepreneurs, we don't sugarcoat things. So whatever we say, maybe you should try to sugarcoat it internally a bit, so things are not as bad as they may come out, actually, in this panel. So now, going to KYC. Essentially, KYC, which is Know Your Customer, is the process that you do when you go to any financial institution to identify yourself. And this is done mainly to avoid money laundering. So what we do at Norbloc is we build a platform where you can go to one bank that participates in the ecosystem. You can identify yourself as a company or a physical entity in person. And then once that identity is created, you can use that identity with other banks or other organizations in that ecosystem. So very tangibly, as a customer or as a citizen, you don't have to collect information twice. You only do something once. You don't have to update your information with 10 counterparties. You only do it once. And there's only one version of truth across the entire ecosystem. Now, this actually, the biggest challenge in implementing this, and actually we're doing this right now in the UAE, is the fact that technology is ready, people are not. When we talk to banks and we get banks in the room, they say, of course we want to do this, it's great, we're going to save so much. Well, actually, eventually we'll have to remove people, and then it's going to be fully ready. Yeah. But the thing is that it takes blockchain technology, that it's all about different parties coming together to work together towards a common goal. If parties cannot agree on how to work together, that's a much more fundamental issue than the technology we apply for them to enable them to work together. So in the case of Greece, this is actually an ecosystem which is amazingly fertile, because we leapfrog, that's one key thing. We have 4 systemic banks that know each other to an extent that is borderline legal, so they can learn to cooperate with each other, know how to cooperate with each other. So we can really build a system here that actually will leapfrog, will create enormous value to the citizens, to the customers of the banks and society in general. So I think there are things that are actually quite optimistic, and there's quite a lot of value to be created, there's quite a lot of value to be realized also from everyone in this room. So something, let's say, to counterbalance the AI loss of jobs situation.
Very good. Very good. That was very nicely sugar-coated. Talking about sugar. I want to take a vote, and I want to take a vote with the panel and the audience as well. I'm going to ask you, what do you believe AI and blockchain is, but let's stick to the AI now and say if it is disruptive or if it is evolutionary. So who does believe that AI is disruptive? Raise your hands, please. From the... Okay, including the panel as well. Disruptive or not? Okay, these are the disruptive people. Who does believe that AI is evolutionary? Okay. Who doesn't believe that it's both? Ah, well, we have it in the middle as well. Okay, good. Nice. Okay. So let's move on. We have a bit more time, and I will go to something that I would like to focus a bit on the blockchain. And I will ask the panel to give me just a 10-second or 20-second each an idea where blockchain can find implementation in their own fields, if at all. Let's start from...
Yeah, I kind of hinted on this in my previous, in what I said before. Blockchain, we have to think of it as a couple of things for agriculture and food. First of all, the immutability of the record, and the fact that nobody really owns the data, but there are multiple parties, multiple trusted parties that are hosting the data and are vouching to the validity of the data. So these are two very important properties, and they're very important for the supply chain of agriculture products and foods, because there are multiple stakeholders, because certain parts of the supply chain are kind of oligopolistic, so there are some very few entities that control those parts of the supply chain, and by consequence, you don't want those entities to sort of control the data, but you want them to be validators of data alongside other authorities that are more trusted and sort of validating that, hey, this product was harvested here, it was stored here, it's under such and such quality control conditions, and when it is sold to the consumer, it's accompanied by data that's trustworthy. So the properties of how food is farmed, created, stored, and transported and sold are making blockchain an ideal technology for bringing back the trust. When I was growing up in Greece, perhaps this is still going on, people were coming from the village bringing us like olive oil in the tank and eggs and hens even, right? Because you trusted who those people were. You knew where the product, where the food was coming from. Now, in the industrialized like food supply chain of today, you're losing that trust. You're losing that information of origin. So technology along the lines of blockchain and of course the Internet of Things is promising to bring back that layer of trust.
Okay, I'll be very quick because I think blockchain and fintech is like two things that, I don't know, every people make the connection. I guess the most known application is fintech. But to say something else is like, if you're asking for our side of things, like what my company does, actually, we don't really care right now. And this might sound weird in this context, but the only reason at this stage that we would use blockchain would be to hire some people that do not know what blockchain is but think it's hype. So we are far, behind in even considering using this technology for any reason, like I don't know, kicking out some centralized providers, but it's not something that concerns us right now.
Yeah, in the insurance industry, I think blockchain will have an impact on reducing costs, whether they're driven by fraud or by exchange of data, very similar to what Astyanax business is doing in banking. On that one, can you transfer data much more safely with a timestamp that you know that a claim happened after somebody got insured, or can you verify that records on somebody's health have been there and they're the genuine ones? There's a lot of money that is being wasted by insurance companies right now chasing this data around. So there will be an opportunity there, and there will be disruption for sure. But to Astyanax's point before, the main problem is getting all the stakeholders aligned. So it needs to come from the regulators and from the state rather than individual companies doing this. It's a coordination effort that needs to happen.
I'm clearly biased, but I will say it's identity. Identity in general, identity for people, for companies. And let's not forget that some people do not have any government to provide them with identity. So identity in general is a very big topic that blockchain can solve.
I don't understand much about this blockchain technology thing. I think I'm a total noob with this, so I'll give you the noob's perspective. It seems to me that this is a technology that can do a couple of things that were absolutely physically impossible before. And we don't seem to know what to do with them. And you know, if you're old, it's a good thing for these things sometimes. I remember a time when we have discussions about the TCP/IP and how this was a phone, a telco technology. The big companies were AOL. We're having a discussion about how many modems do you have per user to be able to help them dial in. And I think this is the stage we're in right now with the blockchain thing. You know, we have a TCP/IP of sorts, and it enables some things that were unimaginable. But, you know, back then, nobody in this conference was saying, one day someone's going to be giving you a package with something that you bought on your mobile from Amazon within a day. Back then, we weren't imagining what are the real implications and what this would create. Because I think everything that is going to come out of blockchain is probably going to be a second-order effect. Now the technology is terrible, borderline useless. For many of the, it is, sorry, I mean, 7 transactions per second, it has a lot of problems. But yeah, it's TCP/IP in the early days. And back then, it would be Cisco guys saying, we're going to make you a router. But really, the big things that came out of that, we have them in our pockets, and they have changed the way. Right now, we're talking about depression in teenage girls who look at a lot of Instagram in America. So we really, I find it completely impossible to imagine what's happened to it. But the kind of thing that it is looks like the kind of thing that might change the world in ways that we cannot predict.
So we have trust, we have security, we have compliance, and we have hope that can change the world, but we don't understand it right now. But now is the time to pass the ball to you. And I would like to take questions from you, something that bothers you, something you don't understand, something you're excited, something you want to share. Please.
Hi, Panis from Disrupt Europe. I want your opinion, all of you or some of you, about ethics on AI, because there is a lot of fuss on that. You didn't cover almost, especially, except Nikos that is saying stuff about AI and AI ethics. There is a lot of also R&D on that. We have the recent Microsoft, AI bots that went crazy. Yeah, that's it.
It's a great question, and we wish we had 2 more hours because the ethics will take a conference by itself. But I would let you discuss the ethics. I've written on the ethics of AI, but I would let the panel talk about the ethics. Whichever.
I think we should not all say something, maybe one of us.
Yeah, just 2 words. It's the Wild West. That's the situation right now, right? Let's face it. But it has happened before. I mean, to Nikos's example on the first days of the internet, as we all know, the first sort of real data payload that came through those dial-up lines, broadband lines, was porn, right? So there's when new technology starts, ethics go out the window for the initial sort of period, and then you start to regulate, and then human conscience takes hold, and things start to sort of regulate themselves. So I wouldn't be too stressed about it.
If I may add something on the ethics, sometimes I do the parallelism is you try to put the horse in front of the car. In order to talk about ethics, you have to reach a point of consciousness. Before that, we can talk about how we regulate the use of data and use of metadata. And metadata, if you don't understand, is not who you spoke to. It's not what you said with the person you spoke to, but who you spoke to, what time, from where was the call, and where it terminated. So the use of metadata, but that's conventional still. If we go to talk about ethics, it's like now we have the chimpanzees deciding how the ethics would be for the humans. I made the parallelism, now you work it out.
The ethical discussion is a religious one. Okay, it's a religious one because we are ascribing personhood and the and the weight of morality into something that isn't a person or a thing in that matter. It's animism, actually. It's pre-religious stuff. We're taking inanimate objects and think of them as persons. And a final note on ethics and all the people who are concerned about AI. Humanity has a great talent for finding ways to screw people over without great technology. We used to do it with sticks and stones. So if you're worried about, low-skilled people getting a hard life, they're doing it already. Have you seen how Walmart treats their people? They don't need AI for that. So I don't think that should be our primary concern.
Next question.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. My name is Mike. I'm an immigrant, but Greek. How do you guys see the landscape of the ecosystem, or in general in Greece? Is there going to be any filter ground for us that are outside to come back in the next decade? And individually, is it something that you can do? Are you providing some kind of incentives for us to come back? Talking of doom and gloom.
Yeah, exactly. So reflecting this conversation, we were on the same panel with Nikos, I think 5 years ago. We're having exactly this conversation. I think everybody was packing their bags at the time, going away. Reflecting it now, there has been, I wouldn't say a reversal, but there's definitely a slowdown in the brain drain side of things. Comparing it with Cyprus, just looking at us having offices in both, the incentives there are much, much better to bring people back. But the need for people that are more than plumbers, the need for people that are good data scientists, good software guys, I think will always be here, and good companies will always look to hire. We do have incentives as a company. We have a relocation bonus. We actively look to recruit from the UK and from the US. We have already brought a number of people back. But again, it really comes down to what people are looking for when they come back. I think something that they need to be very pragmatic and realistic about is that there's very few job opportunities in the Greek market that will be at the cutting edge of any field. So that's a compromise that one has to make with, which company am I joining, what role am I going to do, and how much do I like the sea and the sun and the lifestyle side of things rather than the work side of things.
No, actually. So there is one element as well, because it's, in terms of incentives, I mean, there's a couple of things. First of all, we're all for-profit companies. And the other thing is actually that we have to be equal opportunity employers. So we cannot offer any incentives that are not offered to anyone, any potential employee in any location we have. So of course we can do our part, but also it has to be done within limits of normality and fairness as well.
Of course.
So I think, yes, still there are not so many companies in the cutting edge, but actually much more than I think, let's say 5 years ago. So I think actually when we come to a point that we have opportunities are coming and investments are coming in Greece, not humongous amount, but the scenery looks much nicer than before. But actually, people still think that Greece doesn't have opportunities. There is a lag there. I think they're going to realize that it's not the same as it was like 5 years ago. People still go to universities thinking I'm going to go abroad to find a career or a job, that I have to do that. But that's actually not exactly the case right now. Actually, there are companies struggling to find talent in Greece. I mean, good candidates are hard to come by. That's why companies like Nikos exist, and they try to help you with that. And yeah, about incentives, there is one major incentive apart from, of course, relocation bonuses and all the stuff that we offer, and I think most people want to do. I think the biggest incentive is Greece, actually. People want to come back home. 90% of the people that's my number, I just made it up, but I know I was recently a student, and almost everybody that left Greece actually wants to find a reason to come back. We are people that are close to their families. We are people that love their country in general. So it's a big incentive. Yeah. So I think I want to end on a positive note. I think there will be more reasons to come back to Greece in the following years, and I'd like people to believe that.
I think we reached the end of the panel. We would leave you with one note. Both the state and the entrepreneurs should make efforts to accommodate young people who are willing to dive into those technologies, being AI or blockchain. Both of them are promising to change the world in their own speed. Both of them make people fear, but at the end of the day, let's hope for the best, and let's hope Greece will become a hub for R&D that accommodates those people with incentives for us to become what Switzerland has become as the Silicon Valley of blockchain. So we can look on the Southern Europe and become also innovators. Thank you very much. Thank you.